Good evening, welcome to African Drums. I'm Elsie Harry and I'm glad you've joined me this evening. Last week, we began a discussion about the results of local government elections. At the time, GCOM had not officially announced the results. It has since then done so. Therefore, our discussion tonight is about the results of local government elections. Also, our discussion last week raised some issues which we promised to return to, so here we are, part 2 of our discussion on local government elections. Tonight, we brought back 2 of our panelists, Mr. Freddie Kissoon and Mr. Vincent Alexander, for this discussion. Freddie, Vincent, welcome again to African Drums.
Thank you very much, Elsie.
Okay, and are you ready to complete the discussion? I know, Freddie, you had some lingering issues last week. Are you ready to complete?
Oh yeah, the lingering issues I had have now been crystallized because I've looked at the totality of the results, and I think it's bad for Pt2 and it's bad more so for the AFC. I am not going, look, I'm an analyst. I'm wearing my analyst hat here. When I leave here, I'm a political activist. If the PPP boasts that they won the LGE, I don't think we should react to that and deny it. The point is, the total LGE of one person, one vote, the PPP won 29,000 more ballots in the totality of the local government elections. But there are some areas that serious concern. Now, Trotman, the Minister of Mining, I don't know why he would pronounce that. Anyway, Trotman's the Minister of Mining, maybe he's also the Minister of Governance. He said that they were not worried about the election results. Look, one of the obfuscating factor, one of the factors I think the AFC and Pt2 leaders are throwing into this configuration is, hey, there's a low turnout. But at the end of the day, we have to analyze the votes that are there on the table. A good example is, I belong to a club of 100 people. I'm contesting elections. Election was held. Only 10 people voted out of the 100. But I got not one. Therefore, of those 10 votes, I have to analyze why I didn't get one. So you have to analyze why from Tushin to IFLOT, the PPP picked up 7,069 votes and the coalition picked up 1,600. You have to analyze why from Mon Repos to La Reconnaissance, the PPP picked up 7,000 votes to 686 for the coalition. That's massive. Now, so there's a low turnout. Well, if there's a low turnout, we still have to account for those votes. And I think when you account for those votes, I would not subscribe to the traditional hackneyed, ordinary explanation you find everywhere else around the world. Oh, people don't take these local governments serious as they take general election. That may be so for many countries. I don't think that was so for this LGE. I'll come back to that after Vincent.
Okay.
See, let me start by holding a brief for GCOM. You said that when we were here in the last occasion, GCOM had not announced the results. And there seemed to be a belief around the country that GCOM took an inordinate time not only to announce, but to count. And I would like to correct that. I would like to say that by Saturday, the Saturday after elections, all the results have been declared. All. And what we have to recognize is that this was not a general election where GCOM at the central level was going to make one announcement. There were 7 to 1 announcements which were made across the country by Saturday, the day after elections. There were some recounts, and so in the instances where there were recounts, those had to be re-announced at a subsequent time. What GCOM is required to do centrally is to gazette the results and to gazette them along with the names of the persons extracted. And that might have taken some time. But it is not true that GCOM was tardy in the count and tardy in the results in those 71 places. The results were in 71 places. This was not one election. This was 71 elections. And that brings me to the other point, the point that Freddie has already addressed. I think that one has to be careful not to look at these elections as if they were one and to bring the aggregate figures up for analysis without paying attention to the disaggregate figures. One has essentially to do that. Because when you look at the aggregate figures, the argument is, well, there were 71 elections, PVP won 4-1, AFC, APNU and others won 30. But that does not speak to something Freddie spoke to. What was the absolute count? Because once you have elections in local government areas, then there are different numbers of people in these different places. And to win most of the results does not necessarily add up to getting an overall majority count. Not that that didn't happen this time, but I'm just saying that one has to be careful that you don't run away with that view. So I think that is one thing that we have to put into the equation as we look at the results. So for example, APNU AFC won Georgetown. Georgetown represented a voting population of over 100-something thousand persons. But that's one election they won out of 71. Let's say the PPP won Kurivitan. Kurivitan represents a far smaller number of persons. But that's one election that they won. And so it takes us back to the old problem the country used to have. And our elections were held essentially on a constituency basis. And when the PPP in the old days would win 40-something% of the votes and get 60-something% of the seats, and the PNC would win 40-something% of the votes as well and get 30% or 20% of the seats. Something we had to correct by PR, though there's a lot of imaginations about how we got to PR, and nobody seeks to discuss the question as to whether PR is fair or unfair, just or unjust in our circumstance. Everything is focused on the imaginations of how we got to it. And even in those imaginations, people tend not to factor in that no matter what the British had in their head and what the Americans wanted to do, that it was Chelly Jagan who first signed on to and in fact proposed that leave it to Duncan Sands to make the decision. And that's what happened. It was left to Duncan Sands. Burnham subsequently concurred. And when Duncan Sands made the decision, hell broke loose in Guyana because the PPP didn't consider it favorable to them to have a PR situation. Though they're the ones who now would not acquiesce to changing from PR to a hybrid system that seeks to reflect two things. PR on one hand, where the overall result is proportionate, but at the same time a high number of constituencies so that you can create a greater amount of connectivity. And so I want to go on to say that if it is a contention that the PPP won in all of these constituencies, then I think we are on the verge of what the Constitutional Reform Commission spoke about. In 2001, we went to elections with 10 constituencies simply because we didn't have the time to demarcate and construct a large number of constituencies. And it was agreed that after the elections, we'll get back to that construction. So here's the opportunity now. Have no fear. You've won most of the LGs. Let's go for those constituencies so that the country can create a situation of more connectivity and more representation between the people and their representatives. Now, having said that, given my initial contention that one has to disaggregate, there are a number of things that you have to look at. Let's look at the example of what happened in Kakwani. Few people seem to recognize that in Kakwani, the group, which was a community group, did extremely well. And in fact, in the PR section of the elections, got more seats out of the PR than the APNU AFC. Not to mention that the PPP got absolutely no seats in that area, absolutely none. And that was in Kakwani, essentially an African Guyanese enclave in this country. And so it reinforces the point we made last week about the disposition of African Guyanese exercising their minds at an election time about for whom they should vote, as opposed to simply voting for the APNU AFC because that's the Black People's Party. They exercise their mind and they give votes to other parties. Probably still an ethnic vote, but unlike the areas where the PPP are dominant, the ethnic vote is monolithic. There is no split because of somebody has stepped in. So I want to make that point. The second point I want to make is if you go to the results in Irish Gibraltar, you see that in Irish Gibraltar, in 1994, a community group won those elections. They were able to cross the divide. In 2016, for whatever reason, the AP and UFC decided to run against the PPP and they lost. If we come now to Belfort-Wacton, Triumph Belfort-Wacton, in 1994, a community group won those elections. That group ran again this time as a community group and won again. Here we're seeing the possibility of instances where it's not a race between the PPPC and the quote-unquote the PNC, and there is some group that is local, that seems to represent local interests both in terms of its ethnic composition and the things that they stand for. It stands a good chance of standing up against the PPP in that circumstance. And we have the case also, though it wasn't a victory over the East Bank, of the Good Hope Caledonia group that did fairly well. Again, it was not APNU AFC group, it was a community group, and they did fairly well. So that whilst the political parties may have the kind of concern that Freddie spoke about, I think that the lesson to be learned by the nation, and I'm more interested in the nation than these disparate parties, is that we still have to a large extent ethnic voting in the country. Ethnic voting among groups that are not the same, and that's why we talk about the plurality. They have a different disposition to life and things like that. And so it still poses the question as to what's the real solution in Guyana to the kind of government and the kind of governance that would not impose a one group majority rule on the rest of the society. And I think that is still the big question that we are faced with. And that really, if AFC, APNU wins, or PPP wins, Guyana loses. And that the need is to find a solution for Guyana to win, where we can get to the point of politics based on issues and ideas rather than politics based on ethnicity.
Okay. On the issue of the need to disaggregate the votes for the different constituencies, has it been done? Has GCOM or another group disaggregated the votes and decided, okay, this is the number of people that actually voted for the PPP versus the number of people that actually voted
Freddie
for the
gave you the
PPP.
results of that. Freddie,
Yeah, they have
Freddie
done
gave you
that.
the
They have
result.
done
That's
that.
clear, but that my disaggregating is a little different. It's not just about the numbers. It's about the nature of the communities, and that's why I came back to the final point. At the end of the day, what occurred was the normal ethnic voting, where African Guyanese turned out. They turned out in the main for AP and UAFC. Where Indo-Guyanese turned out, they turned in the main for the PVPC. But we see, as we look at those individual communities, we see some interesting things happening in places like Kwani, I mentioned, in Firebridge Gibraltar, in BV Triumph, in Good Hope, Good Success, Caledonia. And I think those trends we ought to look at in terms of an understanding of the real politic that we're faced with and what are the challenges we're faced with if we really want to resolve the national question. I mean, let's take, for example, Georgetown. As I said, Georgetown is the largest voting population. The APNU, AFC won that hands down. Hands down. Now, Georgetown is the capital. It's where the action is. And it poses a problem, particularly for PVP government, to be seated in Georgetown in the midst of a constituency that's not their own. So you see the kinds of problems I'm pointing to, right? This big block, because one cannot see things merely in quantitative terms. One also has to see things in qualitative terms. What's the impact of a Georgetown constituency on governance, as opposed to the impact of another constituency somewhere else that's remote on governance? And so one has to see the complexities of the situation that we're faced with. And whilst we may have these announcements, and I was a little bothered that the journalists simply announced figures and announced what people said, we won, and did not take the time off. What happened at these elections is rich for analysts and analytical journalists to go to work and to do the analysis and to throw up all of the scenarios and all of the implications for the nation, but we have not been doing that.
Okay, and on the issue of on the issue of ethnic voting, how do we correct ethnic voting in Guyana so that individuals do not vote based on their ethnicity, but rather the issues that are going on?
Let me say two things about that. Sorry, Freddie. Let me say two things about that. What right do any of us have to correct ethnic voting? It's a reality. I think what we have to do is to accept the reality and to come to a point of working out systems that will not allow the reality to have a negative impact on the nation. So for me, it's not, whilst I am an advocate of working with our younger people in a system I call a pedagogy of mutual respect, so that in fact over time we could seek to develop mutual respect and things like that, I don't think we could head on say, look, let's stop ethnic voting and that's going to solve the problem. Because ethnic voting is only a manifestation of a problem. It's not itself the problem. The problem is, on one hand, the plurality, which is a basis for what has happened to happen. And secondly, the generational poisoning that is taking place that makes it difficult for an Afro-Guyanese or an Indo-Guyanese to step out of the clan and to go put the vote somewhere else. And those are the issues that we have got to address and the issues we've got to solve. And my own contention is that in fact local government, even with ethnic voting, presents an opportunity that we don't take advantage of. You now have these local authorities with clan leaders in charge. If the central government is able to deal with these local authorities within the context of subsidiarity, where they really decentralize and devolve authority to the local people to do things that are local, that can be done local, I think you'll find a situation of less emphasis on national politics, where the real division takes place. You know, the power division. The division down there is geographic and is workable. Secondly, if the political parties were to step out of these local elections and allow people, and there's some councils that are multi-ethnic in terms of the population, significantly multi-ethnic. So you can take the council where Dartmouth is located, where Queenstown is located, where Farm on East Bank is located. They're largely multi-ethnic. If you take the political parties out of the politics there and allow the people at the local level to compete based on recognition of what they have done and what they can do, and in fact make the elections more constituency based. Still not completely constituency based. To make it more constituency based, then we'll tend to have the right combination of people sitting there making decisions for their community. And that's one other point I want to make, that the constituency elections lets in to the council people who might otherwise not be there if you ran purely a PR based election.
So Vincent has taken over
well,
most of the
he
discussion.
has. I will assume that he knows that he has to shut up for the rest of the night.
Yes. He's exhausted all his time.
Yeah, and he has spoken so much that I forgot each one of his non-starters. So I can't reply to all of them because I forgot. But
that's not like Freddie.
Let me start.
That's how much you spoke.
Let me start by saying I don't really accept the theory of 71 elections. There was a general. It's not called general election because general election is for central power, but it was a generalized election in which the two protagonists presented themselves with programs to the totality of the nation. So you have to look at it in terms of how people voted in these elections countrywide, and that is what I'm coming to. I don't accept the basic physicality of Georgetown. Had 100,000 person. The coalition won Georgetown. Portmoran just had 30,000. So in a sense, you can't compare the two. No, you have to look within each victory. Now, for example, Georgetown is largely Afro-Guyanese and they vote for the PNC. But you have substantial, quote-unquote, Indian votes, and you have to look at how that went in the local government elections. And then you see what is so dangerous about these elections. Dangerous in two senses. One, I think there was a certain amount of frustration by African Guyanese of the ruling coalition. And that, I think, is worrying because it's too early. I mean, this is a government that has just been 10 months in power. I mean, what can you expect it to do in that kind of maelstrom of destruction? I mean, you pick up the papers any day and you are seeing bizarre and depraved manifestation of corruption under the Jagdeo Ramatha cabals that literally sucked, you know, the lifeblood of this country. So getting back to the election results, I think if you look at the Georgetown results, you will see there are patterns of Indian alienation that was not there 10 months ago in the 2015 elections. Look at Kingston. Kingston is generally a middle class area. You have very few working class houses in Kingston. You have a few by the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, but it's a middle class area where a lot of light complexion people live, Indians, a little touch of Portuguese, etc. The PPP picked up almost 400 votes in Kingston. I am saying those votes were the middle class Indians that voted in 2015 for the AFC. Those were AFC Indian votes. Then let's look at the heart of the city, where that guy who owned Action Tire, Ron Prasad, ran for the coalition. That would be North Road, Crowell Street, Brick Dam, Demerara River, and Vincent Road. The PPP picked up just short of 400 votes to Ron Prasad 700 plus. Those votes were Indian votes. I think those were the middle class Indians that rejected the PPP in 2015. So I believe the AFC has a problem. But then look at the countryside voting. Now, there are some things that you have to put in the equation. It's not simply ethnic voting. Ethnic voting takes on self-destructive, suicidal dimensions. I've been a human rights activist my whole life, and I can tell you, if I only land in Lenora, in Monrepo, and this happens in my life all the time, I'm talking about prior to the May election 2015, you get all sorts of complaints about the NDC's brutality, about the regional government brutality. Those people picked up vendors from Perica, seized their goods, burn it on the foreshore, etc. Now, you had a government that was 23 years in power. You have a Monrepo market that is extremely dirty. The toilet facilities are absent. So, okay, you had a new government that came into power. A big part of it is supposed to be a so-called Indian party. You went 10 months after a new government come into power with national purse, and you voted back for those NDCs that have been brutalizing you and that you have been complaining about for decades. I think that is ethnic voting. That is just not normal. I think Indian people are not prepared to live with the PNC in government. Call it CNP, call it APNU, or what have you. And it's a thing that all of us sitting around this table and the government have to deal with. How do we solve it? I don't have the answer. I believe if they didn't want the APNU AFC, the coalition in, I think they could have said, look, we're not voting. But to go back with that kind of percentage and put those people in, I'll give you an example of I call it Tushin to Ifra. If you go to those areas, as I do, and you just go there a Sunday morning and they know you Lincoln Lewis, they know you Vincent, Alexander, Freddie, Kissoon, they come and they complain to you. They come and they complain to what those councillors are doing. Those people went consciously there and voted back for that party and its symbol. Well, let me tell you what is so frightening. You take an African Guyanese now with the power to make decisions, to repair Monrepo Market, to repair Lenora Market, etc. How you think that guy will feel when he says, look at the election results and I must go and fix that market up, put in washrooms in that market? What did the people they vote for 23 years did? And I think that is what is so distressing, discomforting, and psychologically unnerving about these local government results, because Vincent Alexander may not do it, Harry may not do it, but some of those politicians may say to themselves, why do I have to spend money in Perica when the Perica people were experiencing that for so many years? We just came into power, they couldn't give us a chance. And that is what I think you need to ask the East Indians. Couldn't you have given these people a chance? They were just 10 months in power. But having spoken about the AFC, which I think has to assess, I mean, come on. Moses Nagamutu has been in politics more than 50 years. Moses Nagamutu is a household name. And Moses Nagamutu's sister, the Prime Minister's sister, ran in his hometown, Wim, and got 32 votes, and her opponent got 300 and something. That's the Prime Minister. That is Moses Nagamutu. No fly-by-night guy.
Well,
that tells you a lot.
My next question to you would have been, does this embrace of the PPP by the Indian voters mean that the AFC is not as useful to the coalition in bringing in Indian votes as they thought?
But that's going to be a problem. I heard that in the configuration of the city council, minus the 5 that the non-coalition people got, the 25 seat for the coalition, I understand only 3 have been assigned to AFC people who were AFC members and entered the election. That's Sherrod Duncan, who's an AFC guy, Carla Gorin, who's an AFC guy, AFC member for Kitty, and Ron Passod, the Action Tiger. Those are the 3 seats that will be given to the AFC. The other was quintessential APNU people, with Chase Green being nominated.
I'm not quite
for.
sure how correct that is.
Well, I have my information. I was told that I don't know after this or what you've been told, but I have been told that those 3 AFC people will be the council. But that could be wrong or right. That's the information I got. But I think the AFC's position becomes untenable, because you have to bring something to the table to sustain the coalition. In 2015, the coalition, the AFC, I think, made the victory possible. I am not sure if APNU had run alone, they would have won. I don't think they would have won. I think people wanted this coalition. And although the votes show that the AFC didn't bring back the 11,000, the 30,000 votes, I think it was the AFC that embrace of APNU that tilted over the 50%. But the AFC in this local government election is standing in very, very murky waters. But I want to, before Vincent come in, and I don't think he should come in, but before Vincent,
give him a few minutes.
Before Vincent come in, I think the PNC, not APNU, has to look at these election results. First of all, a lot of black people didn't turn out. Now, I know what Vincent is going to say, and I know what the mainstream analysts say. Man, black people were so battered, they were looking at central government, and they voted for liberation. They really care about local government. No, I don't think so. I think with that kind of oppression they experienced over the decades, one thought they would emotionally just go out at any election and vote. No, I think there's a certain amount of frustration. As we speak tonight, there's going to be more frustration, because I understand the government has made BK Tawari presidential advisor to the government. That is going to further turn off people. So there have been some turning off of African Guyanese. And I must say it's not so much with the president. I think if you take a poll, he's riding high. But I think he comes across as a man who leaves the other people to do their thing. So if you look at some of these election results, the low turnout also affected seriously the PNC, and too many votes went to unknown people, that when black people look at them, black people say, no man, I don't know them. But anyway, let Vincent come in. But I hope after he comes in, he doesn't go till the end of the program.
Before you come in, Vincent, I'm gonna ask a question, and you can answer this question while you make your comments on what Freddie said. So my note here says a close reading of the turnout shows a higher turnout in Indian Guyanese communities, in Georgetown and Linden especially, for example, where African Guyanese are the majority. the turnout was lower than the national average. Is that a reflection of apathy in those communities, and should the coalition be concerned? Are they really satisfied, as one minister puts it?
I would say any politician should be concerned, even if it's one voter who you thought should support you did not turn out. I put it that crass. Any politician.
That's mainstream automatic response.
Shall be concerned.
Let's get to the essence of the analysis.
But again, I go back to the complexities I was referring to.
71 elections.
I want to. There's one thing myself and Freddie seem to have agreed on, and that is the ethnic nature of the voting, reflected in a difference of psyche. I think it's a point you made on the first program. It's a different psyche at play here. So the people think differently. Now, the African Guyanese turnout, in my view, statistically, even in 2015, has been lower than the Indo-Guyanese turnout. I think if you do the stats, you will see 2011, 2015. 2015, Indo-Guyanese dropped a bit, but still, in overall terms, the percentage turnout was better than the Afro-Guyanese. And I challenge anyone to look at the stats and to counter that. That the African Guyanese did not turn out could be attributed to a number of factors. I would agree that one of the factors had to do with their expectations. 23 years, and unfortunately a mentality which says our turn, and our turn didn't quite come in the 1 year. And so there's a certain level of frustration that this our turn hasn't turned. You've got to remember that there are problems with unemployment, and that notwithstanding all these macro things, people are looking for basic responses to their needs. Jobs hasn't happened. And so that is impacting in the Afro-Guyanese community and may be responsible in part for them not turning out. Whether you want to call it apathy, or somebody else said to me it's an act of protest, not apathy. It's an act of protest. The fact is that what has happened has impacted them in the kind of way they're saying, look, we ain't quite sure that this thing has any benefit for us, so we're not going into it. But I don't think that one could ignore the fact of the lack of knowledge that people had and have on local government. And if you're talking about the people who are not heard, people who have to appeal to reason, then it may be argued that that is another reason why the turnout generally, and more specifically in the African community, was what it was. Simply a lack of knowledge. When you talk about local government, anyone under the age of 40 would have had zero experience. And the people who tend to notice councils in the first instance are property owners. And under 40, again, there's a large number of people who don't really have to go to city council. So what is this thing about? So that I don't think that one could, given those factors at work, could draw an analogy between local government and what is likely to happen in a central government election scenario. I think that the factors at work will be different. I would also say that though the APNU plus AFC went in to these elections as a collective, I'd be bold to say that the energy of the AFC cannot be compared with their energy in the national elections. And so yes, there's a problem. I don't think that sufficient work has been done below the level of the cabinet to really work out the kind of synergies between the two groups for them to have effectively work at the local level. This was not a centrally driven election. This was largely a locally driven election, and it required these people to work together at the local level. I don't think that the mechanisms, the grounding is in place for that to have happened. So that's another signal to the coalition. Have you gotten into power? Have you really, and I think this is a problem not only with the APNU AFC, it's a problem in the APNU itself, coming from 2011. Did they really step back after those elections to see what kind of machinery and mechanisms and relationships they need to inculcate from bottom up to sustain the coalition? And so there are a number of issues here which are not merely electoral issues. There are issues of political organization, there are issues of the nature of the people who are involved in the politics that we have to take into consideration as we look at this matter.
Okay, there are certain aspects of
He
the
actually
results.
finished.
Yes, I mean, it's amazing. There are certain aspects of the results that we want to look at. Kukwani would have been one, but you discussed that already. This one is for you, Freddie. Why did Mark Benchcop do so badly?
I think it has to do with Benchop himself. There are other factors, but if you're going to analyze constituency 11, which I think it has to do with Benchop. 14. Is 14?
That's
14. Yeah. I think there are other factors, but it has to do with Benchop himself. I think Mr. Benchop comes across as someone that is an untraditional West Indian politician. I mean, I've been in this thing my whole life, and Vincent would tell you, PNC and PPP people, they have a style about them that it may be deceptive, it may be deceiving, but they come across as people you can gel with and talk to, and they come across as people that you feel class-wise you're comfortable with. A Hamilton Green, a Shea Chan, those PPP, PNC people. I think Benchop, by his long years in the United States, he has transported that kind of déploiement to West Indian politics that work suit and tie in every occasion. People tend to feel that it's like Peter Ramsarup. Same thing with that guy Peter Ramsarup, who live along, and in every demonstration, at every level, Peter Ramsarup is with a suit and tie. You tend to be a bit intimidated by such people and the way they dress. The other thing about Benchop is I think he thinks that activism, that activism of the period he was in. I mean, Benchop really became famous between 1998 to 2003. I mean, around that period, you had the crime syndrome, you had Jagdeo now coming to power, and I think that period that Benchop was born in, it got overrun. It got overrun by many other things. But I think he was still seeing himself as this charismatic man. But the one factor that I think has devastated him, and I mean, despite my name and my year, I can speak with some authority because I come from those areas. I think black people have not forgiven Benchop for his 2015 entry into the elections, because that for them was do or die. And I live among these people, and I know if they had lost that election, there'd have been massive depression. And so they felt that this guy is presumptuous and impertinent. You come from one of us, now we're ready to take this thing, you're gonna come and split the vote. And then when the results were shown, they said, oh God, thank God he didn't get nothing much, because the PPP would have been back in power. And I think that is something he will have to live with for a long time. I don't know if I should continue so shut out Vincent, but no. Then you
I
have
another question.
Then you have the
Vincent, in
ego
the
thing.
interest of
Then
time.
you have the ego thing. I mean, you can't name your party Team Bench Up for mayor. I mean, Team Guyana. So, I'm telling you, Vincent can tell you, we on the ground there think these working class people say, "Hi Freddie, hi Vincent." You think they don't know the politics? They do. Trust me, they do. I haven't completed my analysis, but let the man come in.
I want to comment on this.
Okay,
the
I'll
name
give
of
you
the-
1 minute
the
because
name
we're
of the
like
party.
15 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
I think the name of the party that Benscop ended up with
Team
is
Bench Up.
an exhibition that he's unable to admit when he's wrong. Benscop started a campaign years ago, Benscop for mayor,
Yeah.
not understanding that in our system you don't run for mayor. He
Yeah.
brought the Yankee thing here.
Mhm.
He wasn't man enough to say, I made a mistake, and then to name his team properly. So what he did was to say, no, I didn't make a mistake. My team is Ben Scott for mayor, and that's the team. But that was never really the team. That was his belief initially, that Ben Scott could run for mayor. And he didn't have the humility to say, I didn't understand the system, I made a mistake, and it was the source of a lot of confusion because people started talking about mayor, who running for mayor. And then
So
saw
you never
him,
clarify that.
when it was clarified nationally that he can't run for mayor, they saw him as a joke. So that contributed to this joke. Running for mayor, he can't, and there's nothing like that.
Well, at the University of Guyana debate where Team Bench Cup for mayor participated, their explanation of the name of their party was that they're being transparent. We know that that the general population cannot elect a mayor, but we are saying to you point blank that if you vote for us, that will be our mayoral candidate.
That's a possible strategy. The PNC used that strategy in 1994. GDG used that strategy in 1994. So you had Hardin versus Green. But people understood what was happening. They did not understand in the first, not they, because they weren't there. It was Ben Scott alone. Didn't understand.
But can I ask the two of you, seriously, this is a very analytical
But
man
you shouldn't
that-
ask me.
No. I will ask Vincent, but I will
Yes.
ask you. I will ask you because you're a final year university student and you're politically conscious. How you think people would feel? Because I want to use this term as a joke. How you think people would feel at that historic election? You have Bench Up trying to compete against this vehicle of this coalition with Granger, these soldiers like Nagamutu. Honestly, tell me, you don't think people would say, who's that joker, man? Well, tell me.
There would be an element of that, I would think.
And with that, we're on to our next question. In BV on the East Coast, an independent group called the May 8th Movement swept the polls. The coalition did not contest there. Is there a model there in BV to be followed?
This model exists since 1994. I do not understand why the APNU, probably because of the AFC, decided to get back into all of these local government elections when the evidence of 1994 suggested that if you allowed local groups that could not be branded as PNC to run, they stood a better chance in certain communities than the PNC. Because what the PPP campaigns against, it has all sorts of ethnicities and ethnic politics involved, but it cannot be separated from that brand PNC. And so once that brand turns up, then you go back to the history that they've told the people about the PNC, and that's the end of it. But if that brand is not there, and you even have community people who are PPP but don't like the candidates join in the group, then you have a different situation. The evidence is there in 1994.
He actually was brief.
He's getting better as the show
But
is winding
the
up.
program is about to finish. So if we have 10 minutes left, the man has
So
us
this is a Mark Benchcop tricky working. Winding
Mark Benchcop tricky's working.
shorter and shorter as the program is coming to an end to appear more.
No, I give him. We've known each other our whole lives. We born a corner away from each other. And I've always regarded him as one of my favorite PNC politicians. I don't know if he's still a PNC politician, but no, he's above that. He's above the bench up machinations. I hope I'm right. No, he's all right. You want the floor?
No.
Okay, well.
So the question has to be.
The moderator.
Well, since we're undecided on that, let's go on. The president has said that the local authorities should begin to operate as corporations. Presumably, he means that they should become economically self-sustaining. But is that possible within the context of our legal framework? Can an NDC, for example, independently woo investments from, let's say, the US into its neighborhood?
It's not impossible, but that is not the answer to the question. It's not impossible. For example, NDC should have some control over state lands. They should be able to work towards things like industrial estates and things like that. So it's not impossible. But by virtue of their status, they're already bodies corporate. So, it's a non-issue as to they should be bodies corporate. They're already bodies corporate. Nowhere in the world has local authorities been able to get along without central government's subvention. So don't let's fool ourselves about that.
Yeah.
Nowhere in the world. So there could be, if you look at models of development, if you look at whether it's the growth pole approach, whether it's the community approach, whether it's a comprehensive approach, local authorities tend to fit more into the community approach to development. And in that regard, they can do a lot of stuff in relation to small industry and in relation to empowerment of people. And I think that is where they need to focus. The traditional local government functions, small industry, and empowerment, and you can tie the empowerment to small industry. But it's going to take a while, and in terms of the kind of capital required for infrastructure development, local authorities have always in the past looked to central government for that assistance. But we mustn't rule out certain things. One, that local authorities in the right environment can do things like the lotto and make money. It's only because of the last government that Georgetown didn't get to do the lotto. They can do that. Local authorities can raise the benches if they want to get involved in large capital projects. So theoretically, there is scope. It's not a question. I'm not quite sure that the local leaders are themselves up to it. This is going to be a learning curve, and hopefully a positive learning curve for local leaders to come to the realization of what can be done by local government, and hopefully the central government will not, out of jealousy, try to stop it. And that's why I always argue for this whole system of subsidiarity, of having real devolution, and central government committing not to step in for political reasons to interfere and do things in local areas.
Okay.
He stopped.
Yes.
I wanted to. He didn't give me time, but there are a couple of other things I wanted to. Get through. Remember when I ventured into the causes? I said we will get one of those mainstream explanation as the local government is not something people familiar with, etc. But you got to remember, this is a very small, not physically, sociologically, this is a very small country. What happens in Georgetown, everybody knows. And I think the 10 months have not been enlightening. I think when you inherit this country with what the PPP did, people expected transformative leadership. They expected radical maverick kind leadership. And I think they have fell down a bit badly on that, and it's too fresh in people's mind. The salary increase that didn't go down well at all. I think that was badly organized. Then in the midst of a local government election, you have the city council brutalizing vendors, putting them in some little shabby place, etc. Then there is this talk about corruption, and nobody ain't getting arrested or what have you. People, I think people just say, no, no, no. Look, man, I've had enough of these people. Let me stay home. I believe if the 10 months have been really dynamic and enlightening, you probably would have got a better turnout among African Guyanese.
Do you have a response to this, Vincent? We have like 3 more minutes.
No, I would have said
it's going to take all 3
I don't have a problem with some of what Freddie said, and I would argue that if it was enlightening in the manner in which he said, you'll have a turnout, larger turnout on all sides. Because what would have been done would have also been fodder for opposition politics, and would have also resulted in them being able to generate a larger turnout.
Okay. Perhaps we need to have a show on these issues that you mentioned, the vendors, the city council, the vendors, things like that, at another time, because...
But don't forget, they also put some people on some people on the list that Georgetown was annoyed about. Oscar Clark, Patricia Chase Green. People were looking for these young people like yourself, Harry for mayor and those things.
No, I would not name my party Harry for mayor. Viewers, thank you for staying with us. We hope you enjoyed the part 2 of the local government elections discussion. We will not be having a part 3, so I hope all your questions were answered. I'm Elsie Harry. This has been African Drums, the television organ of the Pt2 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the African Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. Please like our Facebook page, it's Pt2. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, also Pt2, and send us an email, pt250gy@gmail.com. Donate to the cause, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Where you are?